Hey everyone, I'm Ben Parker, full-time LSAT teacher and co-creator of HeyFutureLawyer.com, the world's most effective LSAT prep. I've taught thousands of students to break into the 160s and 170s using a reading first, common sense approach to the LSAT. What we find is that when you do the right things, that's truly where everyone ends up. I think I'm going to touch on that today. But anyway, today we're diving into a few things. First off, my prolonged absence, which if you're a loyal listener, you may have noticed. Most of you that probably didn't. But I got the death flu. So I'm going to quickly start by saying, if you haven't gotten the flu shot, I would. The flu going around this year is so awful. When I got it, I was unable to talk for basically 2 weeks with extended effort. I've now been able to, obviously, as you can hear, but I still have a cough. It was genuinely miserable. I had a nice conversation with ChatGPT, basically just going through my vitals in terms of like heart rate and whatnot, in terms of when I should go to the hospital because I felt like I was actually dying. So that was miserable. Anyway, the flu sucks, and I would try to avoid it if I were you. When you do want to get a high score with us, check out everything at the link tree in the show notes to study with us. We are always working on what we're offering. We've been doing a bunch of cool stuff to start off 2026. And the best way to find out about that is to visit our website and see everything we have. So, excuse me. So with that, let's get going. What did I tease? Oh, the whole 160s, 170s. So for those of you that don't know, I've taught LSAT for about 5 years now. I started in 2021 after taking the LSAT in the fall of 2020. And from teaching LSAT, I kind of always thought that, you can help people improve, but some people, they stick to it very well or take to it very well. Others take to it less well and they struggle more. And now we have a website where we observe what people do. And what we have noticed is that it is basically always the students, I don't want to say fault, but their action determines how they score, which in hindsight potentially should have been obvious. But after hearing so many people talk about how they study and don't improve, you start to think that that's true. And I think many of you probably think this is true, where you're like, oh, some people study and yet don't make progress, they plateau. And what we're finding is that's just not real. It does not exist. People do not study properly, which, quick note, properly, I remember what I was going to talk about. Properly is very important because the reality of LSAT prep is that most LSAT prep is intellectual junk food. And by junk food, I don't mean that it's bad for you, but what I do mean is that it's not filling. It actually doesn't help you improve. And it's because doing the work that is actually required is not particularly fun. And as such, even though the way to get like a 165 LSAT is actually very simple, people just don't want to do it, is what I found. It's actually something that I think we're kind of trying to work through in terms of a business strategy. Because one of the things I have a really hard time with is that I know that I can get basically anyone a 165 minimum. And I'm using the number 165 not as like an aspirational, but as like a floor. Like that is what we get people to when they put in proper effort over like a 6 month window. The issue is that that proper effort requires one, doing it consistently, and then two, in that consistency, doing things that are challenging to self-perception. Because I'll cut to the chase. It requires doing questions. Most LSAT prep is focused on teaching you all knowledge. And by that, I mean teaching you about different question types, teaching you like, oh, here's your approach to like chaining conditionals together or some such nonsense. And the reality is that this stuff doesn't meaningfully move the ball. The way you actually have to get better at the LSAT is rather simple, which is just to do questions and review them. And a case in point for this, I was actually writing up a blog post for our website, and we don't write blog posts super often. But the reason that I was writing one is because we have a study schedule generator, and some of the activities that are required by the study schedule generator, and for us, this is not out yet. It's going to be out shortly. It's in like kind of beta mode with like users that we're testing it out with, but like publicly, it's not of it. Also, it's going to be a paid feature. So, um, yeah. Anyway, the point is I was writing blog posts for this feature, and in writing one of the blog posts, I realized, oh, this is a pretty good post. I can make a few modifications and basically just throw it on Reddit as a helpful piece of information. And it did not do well on Reddit. So for those of you curious what the blog post was, it was, well, I'll actually read it because it's pretty useful. It's how I teach timed LSAT sections, full-time LSAT teacher since 2021, dozens of 170 plus students. That's the title. I'll also note that I don't particularly like leading with the credibility. I like leading with arguments. But one of the unfortunate things about the world is people actually do care about what you've done. So while I know that I'm legit one of the best LSAT teachers in the world, and I have no doubt about that, people online don't necessarily know that. So you kind of have to convey that. Anyway, so this post, if you want to find it, it's on Reddit, it's on our profile. It's Hey Future Lawyer on Reddit if you're curious. And I basically just listed out how you do sections, and basically what you avoid. I won't read the whole post. Well, actually, I will read the whole post because it's useful, and those of you are studying for the LSAT presumably, so you will get value from this. So I said, I've taught the LSAT full time since the spring of 2021, and I've worked with dozens of students who ended up scoring 170 plus. The biggest differentiator I see is simple. The people who improve are the ones who do a lot of real questions. The people who mostly do long curriculums, videos, and theory-heavy study tend to move slower if they move at all. And even among people who do sections, the ones who do best are the ones who treat questions as something to solve, not something to attempt and rush through. Here's the routine I recommend for using time sections as daily practice. Step 1, have the timer on. Use whatever timing you will have on test day, including accommodations. But do not confuse timed with rushed. The point is to practice under real conditions while staying in control. It is uncomfortable to practice timed, but that is the point. You need to get used to ignoring the clock, and you can only do that by practicing with the clock. Don't hide from the timer, it's coming for you eventually. Step 2, during the section, solve questions, do not just attempt them. This is the whole game. Solving means you read carefully, you predict what you're looking for, you eliminate for real reasons, and you pick an answer you can defend. If you only get through 10 questions, but you get all 10 right because you actually solve them, that is better than racing through 15 and missing a bunch. The second version trains sloppiness, the first version builds a foundation that will eventually lead you to high scores. Step 3, let it submit when time runs out. A section is a training tool. The score is not the point. The point is learning from whatever mistakes you earnestly made. Your mistakes are valuable when you really try to solve questions. Questions you miss indicate real points that can be improved upon. Step 4, after you get the results, sanity check your accuracy. Use your results to diagnose whether your process is working or whether you're just doing volume. Most people are just doing volume. Here are some benchmarks to check to see if you are rushing or actually building a foundation of understanding and solving questions. And I put logical reasoning benchmarks. The first is 2 or more wrong in the first 10, big problem. 3 or more wrong in the first 15, big problem. 4 questions or more wrong out of questions attempted, big problem. Then in reading comprehension, I put benchmarks which are tracked by passage, which is more than 0 to 1 wrong in a passage. If you miss 2 plus in a single passage, you have a giant red flag that you didn't truly understand the passage, or you got sloppy with the questions. Either of these are giant problems. If that keeps happening across multiple passages, you need to recalibrate your approach to the section. This is not a moral judgment of how hard you are trying, it is diagnostic. If you're missing a bunch, the fix is usually not do more. The fix is do fewer questions with more seriousness. But if you keep doing what's not working, guess where you'll end up? It's the same place. Step 5, review smart. And yes, I'm going to quickly dunk on full blind review. Full blind review, which is redoing every single question after the section, is wildly overrated for most people. Why is that? If you need to review every question, it usually means you weren't actually solving questions during the time attempt. You were half reading, picking something, and telling yourself you'll fix it later. That trains the wrong habit, being casual the first time. If you are solving the first time, there is no point in blind review. You've already done your best and left it on the field. A better approach. Redo only the questions you got wrong or weren't sure about before you look at answers. This should be very few questions since you should be solving. Force yourself to commit to reasoning, then check the correct answer and read/watch an explanation only after you've taken another real shot. And I'll skip it because then we talk about our platform briefly. Actually, you know what? I will read it. I'll just read the whole post. If you have a platform that supports something like this, use it. On ours, which is heyfuturelawyer.com, we built a mode called Rewind Review that gives you mostly questions you missed, plus a few you got right mixed in. So you can't just mindlessly change everything. You have to honestly ask, did I solve this or did I get lucky? I genuinely hope more LSAT prep start doing something like this because it matches how people actually learn. Which, quick note, they're not going to because most LSAT prep doesn't care about making people better. But anyway, partly because it's really hard to sell. Actually selling improvement is difficult, but I'll get into that in a sec. If you don't have that feature available, you can still do the core idea manually. Redo the tough ones before you check answers. And then step 6, learn from explanations. Explanations are where the improvement happens. After you take a second shot, then use explanations. For each question you missed or weren't sure about, aim to understand 1, why the right answer is right, 2, why the wrong answers are wrong, 3, what the test was rewarding, 4, what you should notice next time. And then I finally end with the goal of a section is to run into a handful of things you don't fully understand yet, then fix them, do that day after day, and the progress adds up fast. So overall, I'd say this is a very useful post for most people studying. While many of you, as listeners of my podcast, probably study properly, most people don't study properly. A lot of people are blindsided to find out that their study needs to be largely doing questions. So many people study theory. I kid you not when I say one of the biggest LSAT prep companies, and I won't name them because it's not important, but their LSAT curriculum is 34 hours for the first section, 76 hours for the second section, 23 hours for the third section, and then a final hour at the end. So that is, what is that, like 130 hours ish? We'll say 130. I think I rounded down slightly, but it's between 130 to 140. That is a wildly inefficient way to study for the LSAT. With our 6 month study plan of an hour a day, which by the way, we are guaranteeing a 165 for, you would have studied, I mean, you would have basically used all your time on the curriculum at that place, and that's your appetizer to studying. The LSAT is a skills-based test. To get better at skills, you have to practice them. Learning about skills is not good enough, but it is more attractive. People prefer it because the reality is that when you do questions, it introduces hard. It is hard to do questions. You are going to struggle. You are going to be unsure of the question in front of you. You are also going to fail because, I mean, if you're not failing, you're not needing to study. And what I've learned is that a lot of people prioritize that comfortability over the actual improvement, which is, it's been a difficult thing for me to come around on because I have always thought that people wanted a high score as the end all be all of LSAT prep. And for what's worth, we're not going to change how we do things because the way that I want to build an LSAT business is to get people high scores. And if I have to modify the product and make it worse so that we can sell more people in LSAT prep, that is not something I'm going to do. It is just a line that I don't think is worth crossing. And for what's worth, I don't think that people do this intentionally. But what I do think happens is they get pushed into a decision matrix where they have to choose between doing uncomfortable real work that gets them to where they want to be or taking the path of less resistance. And the path of less resistance is easier. It will not challenge them, and they won't get their high score, which for those of you that have listened for a long time, you know the consequence of LSAT scores. Your LSAT score determines what law schools you go to and what prices you pay, which means it controls your financial future. Because whether or not you go to Harvard Law School or the University of Massachusetts will determine what kind of job offers you get. It is going to determine, are you going to make $250,000 graduating or are you going to make $70,000? It will also determine that, like, what price you pay in terms of scholarship. So it's incredibly consequential. And I thought those consequences were sufficient for people to take it seriously. And the more and more I teach LSAT, the more I realize they're not. Most people don't take their careers particularly seriously, which maybe that's because I have a hard time viewing it from other people's perspectives. I think it makes sense to take your career seriously. I think when you're talking about 6 figures of debt, it makes sense to avoid it when it's optional. And by optional, I mean it is optional. If you are applying to law school with below 165, you have made that choice. And I really don't want these to be judgments, but it's also really hard to understand you. I don't get it. I don't get why you won't deal with the uncomfortability because you are choosing uncomfortable just in a different way. Instead of choosing to struggle with questions and like challenge your brain a little bit because you don't want to feel dumb, you're choosing a house worth of debt, which to me is perplexing. And once again, you're going to be the one paying it off. So I really don't want this to be a judgment, but it's hard not to wonder about the seriousness of a person making that choice. Um, I don't know. I really try not to judge people, but it's very perplexing to me. And anyway, so yeah, because from a standpoint, just like really going through the reasons for this, the LSAT is learnable with proper effort. Once again, defined as not like sacrifice your firstborn in terms of effort. Roughly 180 hours of study. Study an hour a day for 6 months and make those 180 hours actually doing questions. If you do that, unless you are like truly the 1% of like non-responders, you are going to get a 99, like not 99th percentile score. That was hyperbole. But you are going to get a good score that saves you an insane amount of money. Most law school applicants do not apply with these scores. If we pull up the like law school application data, which you can pull up with LSAT current volume summary, we can see how many, like what percentage of people do have these high scores. When I pull it up for this current cycle, we have, and it's loading right now, there have been 46,000 applicants, out of which 14,000 have a score of 165 or higher. That means that 60 some percent of applicants do not have a 165 or higher. These are people who are basically choosing 6-figure debt because they don't want to challenge themselves. To me, that is perplexing. And to be fair, a lot of these people have just self-limiting beliefs, or they don't understand that this is optional. Like they really don't think that they can score above 165. But I'm telling you, like if you're listening to this and you choose to apply with 165, you are now making that choice. You cannot claim ignorance because I'm telling you, all you have to do is study for 6 months for an hour a day of actually doing questions with quality explanations. Which if you don't have quality explanations, you can get them through us. And honestly, you should. Like investing a few $100s in LSAT prep versus paying for law school is such a easy choice. Do not get penny wise and pound foolish on the LSAT and spend $0 and then end up paying more for law school. That is insane. And of course, you can argue like, Ben, you're biased here. You make money off LSAT prep. Like, yeah, I do. And it is in my interest to sell LSAT prep. I'm not going to pretend it's not. I like money. I'm not going to apologize for that. Like, do you not like money? It's weird when people get mad at people like trying to make money. It's like, do you not? Anyway, I still provide a good product, and is that not what matters? So my point, though, is that it is an insane decision in terms of the consequences to shortchange yourself on the LSAT, given the ultimate consequences that are coming for you if you go to law school. Now, you can opt out of these consequences. If you don't go to law school, this doesn't affect you. But if you do go to law school, this does affect you. And this is not a choice. You don't get to choose, I'm immune to the LSAT, it's not going to affect me. It is going to affect you. So, anyway, it's always funny, though, because given the behavior of people, you wouldn't think these consequences exist because most people behave as if they do not exist, which is, once again, perplexing. So where was I? Oh, right. I read my whole blog post. The reason I wanted to contrast this was to a post that did do very well on r/LSAT. To give you the summary on how my post did, and I kind of got sidetracked, but just try to quickly remind everyone what the post was. It was about how to do a section because doing a section is a very important way to study. Like if you follow this post, which I put out for free, by the way, there's no call to action to like go sign up for a website. Like this was genuinely not a marketing thing. It was truly just thrown out there because I was like, oh, it'll take me 5 seconds to throw it up. I already basically wrote it. So I'll just amend a couple things for Reddit as opposed to our blog, which, like I said, I was doing for our study schedule, and throw it up. It got downvoted more than it got upvoted. It got a 40% upvote ratio. And for reference, for those of you that aren't familiar with Reddit, they have this upvote downvote system where you can upvote things you like, downvote things you don't. So most people didn't like this, which is crazy because it was like good, useful content. And the reason why it's really crazy is because I want to contrast it with the type of post that did really well. This is someone who I have mentioned in the past. Back in the while or a while ago, we talked about why this person made a really silly post. It was the complete like cheat sheet to conditional logic, which was kind of the LSAT junk food I was talking about. People love to consume these listicles or pieces of information, which kind of it sidesteps the LSAT because the LSAT is a skills-based test, not a knowledge-based test. So when people think about learning knowledge, they're mistaken. Anyway, the post, this one got over 100 upvotes. And to put it in perspective, if you're getting 100 upvotes, you're probably going to get reach of like 40 to 50,000 views on Reddit. My post got 2,000 views on Reddit because it just didn't hit the algorithm. Because if no one's upvoting it, it's not going to get views. And I don't say this out of bitterness because I can make this post tomorrow. It'd be easy. Like to get views is pretty straightforward on Reddit. But my point is that human nature makes it so that the worst LSAT prep rises to the top in terms of not popularity, but in terms of visibility, because this stuff is sexy. People like a post like this, which is the top 5 most common types of necessary assumptions and how to prephrase them. This is redundant to people that are good at the LSAT or that are doing the LSAT properly, or if you're even studying for it properly. Because what's the actual way to attack a necessary assumption question? Well, for one, you don't want to really attack it particularly as the necessary assumption question. You just want to attack it as a question in general. And that is to read the question, engage with every sentence, understand how their premises do not lead to their conclusion, and react to it. And when you do that, the answers are apparent. People, I think, push back on this when I say the answers are obvious, but on the LSAT, the answers are mostly obvious when you do it properly. But that condition of you have to do it properly for the answer to be obvious is where most people fall short. So because they're not reading actively, because they're not engaging with the text, they get to the question and they're unsure of where they're going. Anyway, it's frustrating though, because like this does very well. And just reading it, the person said, and for what's worth, everything they say will likely be true. My issue is not, is it true? It is that it is not useful. And this is nothing against the person who posted this, but rather it's showing that the market responds well to junk. And so it's incentivized for people to spit out junk. Because what it says is necessary assumption questions ask you to find something the author must assume for the argument to make sense. The idea is not stated in the argument, but the argument depends on it. It can be stated in the argument, actually, so that's technically wrong, but it doesn't have to be stated. So, I mean, anyway, it's just some random tutor. Like, random tutors tend not to be LSAT experts, not to be harsh on them, but they don't tend to know their shit that well. Anyway, they continue. These questions can feel confusing because the missing assumption is often phrased unexpectedly and is well hidden among very similar sounding answer choices. No, they're not. They're not similar sounding if you know what you're looking for. They're only similar sounding if you're not reading well. And that's the issue. You guys don't read well. These answers are not the same. When people say the answers all look the same and that all 5 are identical, it's because you're not reading at the level you need to do well at this test. These answers are all different always. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a right answer and there wouldn't be wrong answers. They would be identical. So they're not identical. So if you think they are similar sounding or very similar sounding, you're not reading at the level you need to. And that's why shit like this is so unhelpful because it gets rid of what actually needs to be worked on. It is telling people that when their house is burning down, you need to like clean up and like pick up before. It's like, no, you could pick up and that would be productive, but your house is on fucking fire. And if you don't learn to read or extinguish the house, picking up the junk inside is going to be irrelevant because it's on fire and it's about to burn down. So if you don't learn how to read, knowing the five most common types of necessary assumptions is redundant. And you don't know how to read if you think these answers look similar. And I will also note, people come by this honestly because in the LSAT world, stuff like this is very popular. So it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle where people, because they hear it from like quote unquote like legacy LSAT prep, they start to repeat things like this, like necessary assumptions. I really don't talk about question types too much. I am a big hater of question types because I find they detract from the actual skill, which is reading to understand. Like if you're a good reader, you do well at the LSAT. It's that simple. It really is, guys. If you're good at reading, you do well at the LSAT. That's why people can sit down and crush this test. And the issue is that when you're not good at reading and you fill in all this junk nonsense, it doesn't fix your underlying deficiency. You are still bad at reading and you still won't do well at these questions because you're not understanding. Anyway, they continue. So across modern tasks, the same kind of assumptions appear again and again, which is like true, but you only identify that by understanding. You don't identify that by like knowing the five assumption types. You identify that by knowing what's coming. Anyway, assumption one is the linker assumption, which that's all assumptions basically. That's just linking the premise to the conclusion. They say also this is clearly ChatGPT because they say the job. This is the most common type. It connects a new idea that appears in the conclusion back to an idea mentioned in the passage. It bridges the gap between the evidence and the final claim. I mean, yeah, that's very common for them to make a jump. That's just a flaw when you jump from a premise to a conclusion. So like that is true, but that's not useful. How to spot it? I'm not going to read what he says because, well, I will, but I'll lead with how to spot it. Read actively. Understand. When you read a sentence, have an opinion. Think about it. If you do that, these are obvious because when they talk about a potato in the premise and they talk about a vegetable in the conclusion, you will catch that because you're paying attention. So how to spot it, pay attention. But what he says is look for a key term or concept in the conclusion that wasn't explicitly connected to the evidence. The argument acts as if this connection is obvious, but it never states it. I mean, yeah, that's just how to spot it should be just said as pay attention. They give an example, which I won't read. It's probably an actual LSAT question, and I'm not going to read LSAT questions on the air because, it's not allowed. And then they give an LSAT example. So that's the first assumption, which once again, is this true? Yes. Having learned that, are you going to get more assumption questions right? And the answer is no, you're not, because you still have to understand the skills. And if you were good at the skills, this doesn't help you. And if you were bad at the skills, it doesn't help you. It's redundant. It's not what moves the ball. What moves the ball is your skill of, are you reading properly? Are you reacting? Are you precise in your usage of the English language? And knowing all this LSAT knowledge does nothing for you. But people spend time, quote unquote, studying, and it's why people can study for so long yet not move their scores. When you study crap like this, your score doesn't get better because you're not working on the work that needs to be done. You are picking up inside the burning house, and you need to do the actual questions. But here's the reality. Reading these five assumptions, which I'm not going to read the others. If you want it, you can find it on Reddit. It's very easy to find. You shouldn't because it's not useful. But it's very cheap. You don't feel stupid when you're reading this. You're like, oh, it's making sense. I didn't know what the linker assumption was, but now I do know what the linker assumption was. Or the defender assumption. Now I know how to spot the defender assumption. And meaningfully, when someone has done this and then goes to the actual LSAT, they're not going to get more questions right because they haven't actually practiced. They haven't really worked on the underlying skill. And none of this matters if you haven't focused on that skill. But in the moment, when you are quote unquote studying, it feels easier than doing the actual work. So a lot of people, to preserve their sense of self-intelligence or whatnot, they will avoid that work the work that needs to be done, which is doing questions, missing some, of course, and then reviewing them, and instead take notes on crap like this. And stuff like this is why people will study for the LSAT for 6 months and not score a high score. It's because they don't do the work that needs to be done. If you're listening to this, all you need to do is do the work that needs to be done. If you do, you will score high. That is it, period. The end. Like, your score is up to you. But you can study for a long time and not make progress if you don't do questions. It is why these never-ending posts, or not even posts, because like let's be real, this was an ad for his tutoring services, which is fine. Like once again, nothing wrong with it other than like I have questions about his ability to teach, or not ability to teach, but ability to focus on what matters. Because the other thing about LSAT prep is it's not just about is this true? Because do I take issue with the factual matter of anything he's listed in this post? Probably not. It probably is all true. But here's the issue. Even if it is all factually true, the implication is that this is how you now get better at the LSAT. You need to learn these assumptions. And I could not list the 5 types of assumptions if you asked me to. And I also don't miss necessary assumption questions because my skills are good and the skills are what helps you get questions right. So Like, it's actually funny. I bet if you polled people, the most likely people to know all the different question types are probably the lowest scorers. It really has become something that, like, the more I realize, or the more I teach also, the more I realize that all this stuff is just junk food that was not created because it works at getting higher scores, but rather because it sells better and people are more comfortable with it. And the reality of LSAT prep is that you don't make money based on how many high scores you get. Because once someone gets a high score, they're done working with you. You make money based upon how many people you can convince that they can work with you. And one of the best ways to do that is not to alienate them. It's one of the things I wouldn't say I struggle with, but sure. Well, actually, we will say I struggle with is that we alienate people because when someone shows up and I'm like, yeah, if you get a 155, that's your fault. People hate that and they tend to avoid it. Now, some people that actually want results, which fortunately enough of you exist to where like we can still have a business, they do care about results more than they care about feeling comfortable. But what I will tell you is, I mean, as shown by the data, most of your competitors don't care about the results because if they did, this page would not be possible. And I'll show it on YouTube real quick for those of you watching the video version. But it's the page of applicants. We have 46,000 applicants, out of which only, what is that? 30% have a score that I think is kind of like the bare minimum. Um, so even if you round down to the 160s, which I mean, it's definitely true that anyone with the intellectual horsepower for law school can get to the 160s with proper effort. Not say you're starting there because like all those people love to take this out of context and say that Ben's like an elitist. But the reality is that if you have the verbal skills to be going to law school, and if you want to be practicing in this field and you can't get to a 160, that's going to be a problem. So anyway, yeah, that's like a ton of applicants that are below that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's very confusing to me to see because there's no reason that this has to be the case. Well, what's also crazy is the amount of, I'd say, pure delusional applicants. There's 1,000 people that have applied with an LSAT in the 130s or lower. That is insane. I mean, you can't really get into law school below the 150s, but I mean, and for what it's worth, even in the 150s, you're not getting good offers. Because the reality is that while you can get into law school with an LSAT score in the 150s, they're not schools worth attending at the price you're paying. Because like, could you get into like some bad law school with a 155? The answer is yes, you can. You can go to law school, and it's pretty easy to. But the question is, should you? Because those law schools you'll go to are going to have weak employment relative to the price they're going to charge you. Like for example, if we go to the heyfuturelawyer.com/ROI calculator, which is on our website, we can just plug a school in. For example, like what's a school you can get into with a 155? I don't know, probably let's see, like Ave Maria is the one I clicked on. I don't know this school particularly well. I know one person who goes there because we do have people that go to Ave Maria, and I'm going to pull up their page real quick just to take a look-see at Ave Maria, and then we'll do an ROI calculator. So at Ave Maria, oh, look at me. The median LSAT actually is a 155. The median GPA is a 3.36, and they have very weak employment outcomes. Roughly 2% of their graduates go to high-paying positions. And the expected cost is $255,000 if you don't get scholarship, which when you don't, have an elite LSAT, you won't get scholarship. Now at Ave Maria, you probably will get scholarship if you're a 155 because a 155 is median, which means getting the median scholarship is not that crazy. It's probably a little generous to say you're going to get the median scholarship because not everyone gets a scholarship. But let's assume you do get the median offer because we're being generous today. Even under that circumstance, your net cost to attend this school is going to be $194,000. Given the expected salary, which I will note, we are generous in these expected salaries. It is 91K. You're going to be paying off your debt for 14 years out of Ave Maria. And all of this because you didn't want to study little puzzles for 6 more months. To me, that is perplexing. Because if you got a 165 and you went to Ave Maria, same school, which, if you got a 175, maybe you don't go to Ave Maria. But if you did, there is a decent chunk of the class getting more than that median offer. And so your debt could get chopped by legitimately 100K, which means that let's say your debt goes, let's assume that you're still making the 90K because we're generous. And let's assume that now that you are not paying tuition because let's assume you pay 10K in tuition a year, which means that out of 150K, let's assume you are getting 120K in scholarship. By studying for the LSAT a little bit more, you have knocked off 70K in scholarship. So you don't have to get a high LSAT score, but if you are a rational actor, you should. And I think what it shows is that humans really are not rational optimizers. They are identity protecting, anxiety avoiding, effort miscalibrating creatures. And it really is avoidance plus self-deception. Like I really do think most of these people are not lazy, but rather they're busy, they're anxious, they're emotionally overwhelmed. And when they have to confront the specific discomfort of doing questions which produces improvement, They don't want to because it's uncomfortable, but they also still want credit for trying. So they end up doing kind of like the bullshit study of reading textbooks, watching videos, and doing the things that, while they might feel like they're moving the ball forward, do not move the ball forward. And it's why you get so many people who say the LSAT so hard, who don't get good scores, yet claim they actually tried. Because to me, it doesn't make sense. I don't think you can try and not get a good score if you do it properly. And what's also frustrating is people are like, oh, you need the money. And the answer is like, yeah, like paying for LSAT prep does make it better. Like if it didn't, we wouldn't have a business because we couldn't charge for it. Nevertheless, we give out a ton of advice for free. It's only the implementation that we charge for. Like we give all the tools. I've told you today, you do not have to pay us $1. Your path to success is 6 months LSI prep for an hour a day of doing questions. I didn't charge for that, not a penny. You're listening to this podcast for free. In fact, I paid to like host this podcast, so it's like I'm literally paying to give you this advice, and yet people do have to pay with their effort, and that is more costly than paying with their time for most people. Because most people, it's one thing to write a check, it's another thing to actually sit down and struggle. And further, it's going to attack the ego because the LSAT is going to tell you, like, hey, you're not good at reading, or you are thinking in a shallow way. You're making these assumptions. And a lot of people interpret that as personal attacks, as in like I'm stupid, which is silly because the reality is when you do that, you have to confront that you don't understand things. And for people that are not self-assured, I think that can be a real problem. And so yeah, it's tricky. Anyway, that's kind of the whole spiel of something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. And it is tricky because, like, from a business perspective, we, I mean, I do think there are plenty of people to reach that actually do want high LSAT scores. But I now understand the game better than I did a year ago in terms of what the LSAT market is. And the reality is that the LSAT market is really not about getting you guys high scores. It's about selling you guys comfort and via that comfort, you know, capturing money. And sure, some people get high scores because even when you teach people kind of nonsense, smart people are going to figure it out either way because they're going to do questions and they will attribute their success to really anyone they work with. It's why every LSAT prep on the internet and in the world has success stories because you're always going to have success stories. But I really don't think you should judge people by their success stories. I think you should judge them by their failures. And it's why I'm so proud of what we do because we don't have failures that do our system. We have people that will pay us and then not succeed. I'm not going to pretend those don't exist, but those are people that didn't do the work. And I can say that conclusively. Like if you're listening and you think you're one of those people, like I'm telling you right now, I have access to all your guys' data. And when I look at your accounts and I see that you didn't study for 6 months and you didn't study for an hour every day, I mean every day. I'm not saying this as like a aspirational. I'm saying like you actually have to do it. But if you do it, the results do follow. That's what I'm saying. And so, the good news is if you want to work with us, I guarantee you we'll get you to what, like I'm telling you what we do, which is we get high scores based upon the effort put in. If you match the effort, which like I said, not a rocky cut, but I think I also overestimated or I underestimated the ask. I thought asking for an hour for a day from people was easy. I work out literally every day, not for the past 2 weeks, because like I said, I've had the flu. So I haven't worked out in 2 weeks, which is crazy to think about. But like I'm consistent with things like that. And I didn't miss an LSAT podcast. I mean, I missed the past 2 weeks because of the flu, but that's kind of out external circumstances. I didn't miss an episode for like the whole year because you just do it. And anyway, it's funny though, because I think maybe I assume that people are harder and more serious than they are. And what I think I've learned the most teaching LSAT full time is that most people aren't serious and most people don't care about their future, which took a long time to understand because I thought these things were so baseline assumptions for the game you guys are getting yourselves into. And for what's worth, I'm not saying there's not serious people out there. There are plenty of serious people. What I'm saying is out of the 90,000 some people that study for the LSAT every year, 10,000 of them are serious. And most people are goofballs. Now that being said, if people self-analyze, most people won't think they're goofballs. But I can ask you just as a self-assessment, where are you going to end up at the LSAT? Where are you going to end up on the LSAT? Are you going to end up with over 165? Not where you are at today, but are you going to get there? And for maybe the 165 is a hard cutoff, but like 160, that is for sure defensible. Anything below 160 is like that's a choice. And once again, not a choice. Do you get there? Yeah, but do you eventually get there? That is a choice. So you can self-evaluate that. Anyway, I have a couple emails, not a ton, but I do want to go through them. The first one is from a FAP student. They said, hey, Ben, it's been a while since I received my score, but I didn't want to jinx myself by being excited and not get into a school since my GPA is bad, LOL. Anyway, I maxed out my test and my best was a 166 and I got accepted into SLU today, which I think is St. Louis. So, good. They continue. I didn't quite reach my goal of 170, but I will definitely take it. I wanted to say thank you for all the help and for the website. I'm not sure how I found your website, but if I didn't, I would have went to a very subpar school with a half-assed attempted score last year. Thank you for the common sense approach and the telling it like it is. So yeah, not a lot to comment on there, but that's someone who decided to take it seriously. And did they get a 175 and go to a T14? The answer is no. But their difference in life is going to be night and day because they're going to go to SLU, which, let's be real, not a prestigious school. I'm not going to pretend it is just because it's a customer who's writing in and is complimentary. But they're going to be going to St. Louis, likely on scholarship. Because if I pull up St. Louis University, which is ranked 94th in the country, their median LSAT is a 157. This person is 9 points above median. And they give a scholarship pretty substantially. They give 97% of the students a scholarship, out of which 39% get half to full and 1% get full rides or more. This is someone who's likely going to be in that half to full bucket. They are so above on LSAT that they are going to get a substantial discount, which means instead of paying 55K a year for this school, they're probably going to be paying like 20K. And it could be anywhere between like 10 to 25K. But either way, let's assume it's 25K just to make it smaller. This person saved themselves $90,000 by studying for the LSAT for one more year. That's excluding interest and excluding the type of schools they would have gone to, because maybe they wouldn't even have gone to SLU on full price. Maybe they would have gone to a worse school on full price. Also, we don't know. They're going to go to SLU with 166. They might have better offers. But the point is that this person took it seriously and they didn't have to. Because it's not like you're locked out of law school if you don't take it seriously. You can still go. It's stupid easy to go to law school. Any dummy with a pulse and a credit card can go to law school. The issue is, are you going to go to a school where it's worthwhile? All right, cool. So not a ton on that, but just congratulations to that person. I did get an email from this person, which they ask, hello, I recently got offered admission to Southwestern with a scholarship that would cover 66% of my tuition. All right, so I don't care about the percentage being covered. I care about the actual costs. So we're going to look up how much Southwestern charges for law school. Southwestern. For what's worth, Southwestern is not a good law school. It's in Los Angeles, I think. They charge $63,000 per year. If it covers 66%, that means this person's paying 20K a year, which is not terrible, but it's not good either. And let's actually use our ROI calculator for this person to see what their financial situation is. They continue. On top of that, I'll be able to commute and from campus instead of having to pay rent somewhere else. All right, so you're going to have zero living expenses at Southwestern. Cool. So let's see what your debt is going to be with those assumptions using our ROI calculator. So your scholarship is going to be full, which means you are paying zero in tuition. Actually, let's just X out the tuition instead of putting in scholarship. I'll also share my screen for those of you wondering. Oh, you know what? Sorry, you are paying, but you're just paying 20K a year. So let's say like 23K a year, roughly. You're not gonna have living expenses. So it's a $78,000 cost for you to attend. Okay, cool. Let's continue. And I want to go to school for sports and entertainment law. Yeah, I mean, Southwestern is not really going to give you these schools. The whole idea of sports and entertainment law or environmental law, a lot of these things are kind of fugazi. They're not real. They're marketing. The odds of you actually getting in sports law from Southwestern is kind of bullshit. The place that Kim Kardashian or Bradley Cooper or some NFL player go to get their lawyers, they're not going to Southwestern because Southwestern has a sports clinic. They're going to big firms. So when you all get marketed to by Southwestern saying that we have an entertainment law clinic, the reality is that Hollywood agents are not largely coming from Southwestern. They are coming from elite Los Angeles like firms and pipelines. And are there people from Southwestern that end up in these? Like the answer is yes, of course. And I'm not saying that you can't be an entertainment lawyer having gone to Southwestern. But what I am saying is that the expectations created by the marketing of these schools as entertainment law schools is misaligned with reality. And that going to a school like this because they're good at entertainment law it's mistaken, is what I'm trying to say. They continue. I also applied to Howard and expect to get a similar offer, but that's obviously just speculation. And I have no idea. You didn't say your numbers. I've applied to a few top 40 to 50 schools, but I don't expect to get as much money in scholarship as my LSAT was only 163 and I had a 3.3 GPA. Yeah, so like you could bump your LSAT. Obviously, that's like the easiest lever to pull. To get a higher LSAT will get you better offers. But the other point that I quickly want to hit on is 40 to 50. The top 40 to 50 law schools that's a really dumb cutoff. And it's a cutoff that a lot of people use, top 25, top 40. The rankings are stupid, guys. They are not real. When we look at our law school outcomes page on our website, what you will see is that the US News rankings are not that strongly correlated with the top schools. There are schools in the top 25 that have weak employment. For example, the University of Minnesota. They only send 21% of their grads to prestigious positions. We can scroll down to school number 42, which is Fordham. They place more. So you guys should not look at ranking cutoffs. You should look at employment because Minnesota is considered a highly ranked law school and their employment does not justify it. So it's unfortunate that people use US News ranking as the like end all for selecting schools because it's just it's not real. There's schools that have good outcomes and there's schools that don't have good outcomes. And that is independent of ranking. Does it correlate with ranking? Yeah, of course. Of course, the top schools are going to be better. But there are ones that stand out. Like Santa Clara is ranked 154. It has basically the same prestigious job placement as it's not even a top 100 law school. It has the same placement basically as Minnesota, which is number 20. Minnesota since 21% of their grads prestigious jobs. Santa Clara since 20% of their grads prestigious jobs. So when you all tell me that you're picking a school based on a top 40 or top 50, I just know that you don't understand the game you're playing. And you guys should stop picking schools based on rankings, is what I'm trying to say. It's really stupid. I know people do it, but it's not justified. Pick them based on outcomes. And we have a whole website with the outcomes listed so that you can look at the data. Cool. Excuse me. Still have a little bit of a cough from the flu. They continue. Basically, my question is it worth it to get into more debt at a better school, even if Southwestern has a very decent entertainment program? It's in Los Angeles. Um, for Howard, mean, is your question between Howard? Howard has way better employment. The issue is Howard's kind of an oddball because Howard has good employment because of DEI hiring in all likelihood. It's not because Howard has like a super strong network. It's because a lot of the big firms get their like, for lack of a better term, DEI associates from Howard. And could that be going away as DEI kind of has a bit of a pullback? It could be. So I'd be hesitant to go into like substantial debt for Howard. But I don't know that Howard put you in substantial debt because like it's not a terribly highly ranked school. So like, what is the situation at Howard? Are they charging a lot? They are charging 40K a year. So yeah, it's not a ton. And they do give some scholarship, but you're gonna be oh, you are above median on LSAT. So you'd probably be paying like 40K a year, but you wouldn't be able to live at home. So I mean, the offer between going to Southwestern or Howard, it depends on what you want to do. Like what do you want your job to be? Employment or not employment in entertainment law? If so, like I would go to Southwestern because I don't think you know what you're getting yourself into. But if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, minimizing debt is more important. Um, I was also wondering if I got a similar offer from Howard, would it be worth it because of the networking and employment opportunities, even though it's low ranked? Maybe. But the question becomes, what do you want to do? Because if you want to do big law, then yeah, you should go to Howard. But if you don't want to do big law, then no, you shouldn't overpay for a school that's going to give you these opportunities that you don't even want. You all should really work backwards from what do you want your legal career to be? Because if you want to be a federal clerk, there are schools that you should go to that you shouldn't even think about if you want to be a public defender. Because, like, for example, the University of Chicago is the top school in terms of federal clerkships. But if you want to be a public defender, to pay for U Chicago is overkill. Why would you pay extra money for a degree that's not going to benefit you? Because you can get hired as a public defender going to like the shittiest law school in the country. So why would you go to one of the best? And I mean, not that I have anything wrong with you going to a good school, but going to a good school comes with cost. You have to pay more to go to a school like that. So that cost is unjustified when you don't want that to be your career. So you all need to work backwards from what do you want your career to be? From what you wrote, like you didn't really tell me what you want your career to be. And as such, it's hard to give you advice because like I don't even know what you want out of your career. And as such, I can't advise you what school to go to. If you all don't know what you want your career to be, that is step one in terms of determining what law schools you want. I mean, step one is got to go to LSAT so you have options. But beyond that, the way you pick schools is by doing that. Okay. So I got another one, and this is just meant to be an example of an inquiry we got. So we have an admissions inquiry page on our website. And I'll note it's mostly for screening because while we do offer admission stuff, it's not something that we focus on. So we really want it only to be for people that will really help and not to sell people that will not be helped. And this reach out is an example of someone who's not going to be helped. So the page that we have has them put in their name, email, LSAT, GPA, when they want to apply, their career goal, etc. And I just want to read this person's out, just to give you an idea of, I mean, hopefully in showing the mistakes this person is making, you all can avoid them. So this person has a 148, but is pending for February. This is not good enough. You should not even be sniffing applying to law school until you have a substantially higher score. The score you have will not get you into any law schools worth attending. And the schools it will get you into are going to charge you an arm and a leg for really bad employment outcomes. I'm talking putting you in $200,000, $300,000 debt to maybe make 70K on the back end. It's just not good. And pending for February, I mean, the situation is like, well, what do you mean pending for February? Like, do you have higher practice test scores? You didn't mention that. So like maybe you do, maybe you have made a lot more progress, but we'll continue. Their GPA is a 3.1, which is not good for law school, not a judgment. It just isn't good. You're below median at basically all law schools. Your career goal is public interest, which means you're not gonna make a lot of money. Public interest is like fighting the good fight, which is nice, like good for you. But a public interest person needs to avoid debt. And the reality is with the 148, you're not avoiding debt. So you're gonna put yourself in insane debt to not make a lot of money. That's a very bad plan. They said they have drafts and they're looking for full support. Their target schools is Loyola in Los Angeles. and Southwestern and other online schools. Just to put it in perspective, let's look at Loyola, given that they said that's their number one choice. Loyola in Los Angeles is ranked 71. Their median LSAT's of 163, which puts them 15 points off. Their median GPA is 3.74, which puts them zero point 0.6 off, which means that if this person got in by the stroke of God, they would be paying full price, which means they would be paying $343,000 to attend law school. That's without interest calculated. And remember, this person's probably gonna make 70K on the back end. Them getting into Loyola Marymount would be the worst thing that ever happened to them. I hope for their sake they get rejected. And for what's worth, they will get rejected. With 148, 3.1, Loyola is not going to take you. But even if they did take you, that would be the worst thing to ever happen to you. Anyway, they wrote additional context. I'm really hoping to apply for this cycle with some form of scholarship, which is not going to happen unless you bump your LSAT. My goal is a part-time program, either online or hybrid. Loyola is my top choice because it will work with my schedule. I have children, work and live about 1.5 hours from campus, which this is where I'll pause for a sec. Do you care about your children going to college? Do you care about them having a financially stable life? Because the decision you are going to make if you do not get a higher LSAT is to be putting them in a not stable life. You are going to jeopardize their housing. You're going to jeopardize your ability to feed them. You all should not take these educational debt decisions as lightly as you do. And you are sacrificing your ability to have a retirement, which means that when you are in your old age, they are going to have to take care of you. You are stealing from your children to put yourself in such a bad financial situation. And I didn't say this. I think I was pretty direct in my response, which I'll read to her because I did not offer her to work with us with admissions because I'm not going to take people's money when we're going to hurt them. And to help this person write better essays is the worst thing that I could ever do for her. Because by some stroke of God, maybe I could get her into Loyola, and that would legitimately ruin this person's life. So I'm not going to do that. It's not worth any. Well, okay, maybe if you would pay me 500K, I could do it because then I could give her the money back. But I'm kidding. I'm not doing that. Anyway, she said I need guidance on basically from LSAT to personal statements. Am I doing things right? What do I need to change? And when should I apply by? So yeah, I will also note this was very grammatically broken. This is where I might also get myself in trouble. People's LSAT scores correlate with their ability to write sentences, which you would think is apparent, but it's I could basically tell you this person had a 148 based on the email that was written. The grammar's messed up. There is a lot of spaces that shouldn't be there. There's random commas. I'm not going to go through it all. It's just anyway. So I wrote back and I said, "Hey, so and so, I need to be very clear so there's no misunderstanding. With a 148 LSAT and a 3.1 GPA, you are not getting admitted this cycle. This is not about essays, timing tweaks, or admission strategy. Your application will not make it past initial review. At Loyola, you are significantly below the GPA median. In that situation, schools only seriously read applications when the LSAT is clearly above median. For Loyola, that realistically means at least a 164. Anything below that is functionally a rejection regardless of essays or personal background. At Southwestern, this is not just a scholarship issue. With a 148 LSAT, your application is unlikely to be seriously reviewed at all. To even be competitive for admission at Southwestern, you need to be at least around a 158. Below that, admission itself is unlikely. Scholarship would require being even above that. Because of this, essays and admission consultings do not matter right now. They will not change the outcome. The only thing that matters is the LSAT, and it needs to move by a lot. You're behind the 8 ball, and applying late this cycle makes the situation worse. The realistic and financially responsible path is to stop thinking about applying the cycle, focus aggressively on LSAT prep, and apply only once your score is actually competitive. With serious sustained work, large LSAT gains are possible, and getting into the high 150s or low to mid 160s would completely change your options. But without that, admission is not happening. And then I told her, if you want help with the LSAT, tell me what's up. I did say if you want help focusing on LSAT prep, that is something we are happy to do because it's the only lever here that leads to admission. You can review our LSAT prep options here. I sent this about a month ago for reference, and obviously we didn't hear back. You don't tend to hear back from people when you send emails like that, which is also why I'm just going to end with the easier path in this business is to sell people lies. The best way, if I wanted to maximize money, would be to tell this person that we could help her. And it's not true, nor is it something that I feel ethically okay about. But the reality is that plenty of people will say, yes, queen, and tell her that you can apply to law school. And that is truly harmful to tell people that they can proceed with numbers that are going to put themselves in legitimate danger. I get called negative, I get called discouraging, and I'm never going to stop because the reality is that most people aren't focused on results and getting you guys good employment. And I am. I want all of you that decide to go to law school to be better off for it, to end up in a good career. And following most advice out there, you're just not going to. So Anyway, the queue is empty in terms of actual podcast emails. So feel free to send stuff in. I'm gonna do a big blast out for admissions emails because we're rejiggering how the podcast is done just to make it more structured for 2026. It's not a resolution, but just kind of a chance to like organize things a little bit better. Less of me freewheeling on the mic like I am this episode just to get something out there and more structure. So anyway, I hope you all are off to a lovely 2026. If you ever have anything that you want talked about on the podcast, you can email them in. We have the whole mailbag episode, which I love doing. Reach out to podcast@heyfuturelawyer.com. Thanks for listening to the Hey Future Lawyer podcast. Leave a 5-star review on Amazon, not Amazon, Apple, Jesus. I'm Ben Parker, full-time LSAT teacher and co-creator of HeyFutureLawyer.com. When you want the best LSAT prep on the internet, you can start at linktree/HeyFutureLawyer. It is in the show notes. And remember, act like a future lawyer, get your 165 or better. Your future depends on it.